Hello, friends. My name is Steve, and we're here today to discuss The Road. We're in for a fun time. It's going to be lots of fun. Lots of fun to be had. Varsha, will you start us off with an introduction?
Yes, hi. My name is Varsha. I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain. You can also find me on the podcast Speculative Speculations, on which we are currently discussing, The Southern Reach series by Jeff Vandermeer. And I hang out on the Patreon forum a lot.
And Chris.
Yes. So my name's Chris Mullen, sometimes YouTuber, and can be found in all the places that Varsha just mentioned there as well. And Varsha can't remember because she doesn't do her reading assignments for any of those books, so she can't remember the names of them. So we'll see how far she got in the road. This will be interesting.
Yeah, Chris is just there holding the fort for us.
I like how you describe them as reading assignments.
I'll let you guess.
I'm just giving out homework every week, folks. That's my job. That's my role in this team.
Oh, God.
Well, this was homework that Steve gave us, though. So
that is true.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah. So I guess general thoughts. What do you guys think?
Ladies first.
Chris is frozen, so I guess I'll go.
Yeah.
I thought it was a really brilliant book overall. I finished it 2 hours ago, and I feel emotionally wrung out for having read it. I kind of wish I'd finished it sooner. And I was telling Steve and Chris earlier before we started recording that if I had just been reading it by myself and not for the podcast, I probably would have really spread out the reading over, I don't know, maybe even a month, because it weighed on me so much each time I picked it up. I felt everything the man and the boy were going through, and that's really brilliant for a writer to manage that. The halfway point that we hit when they come upon food and shelter, that was such a moment of relief, like to feel that with them. I think he's done something brilliant here to use so few words, so much about the world, and yet the words used are like so few, so much from very little that is explicitly told to you, like this menacing darkness that keeps coming up, the various descriptions of darkness. Why is it so dark? Because, the ash is falling from the sky, they can't see the stars, and that's never explicitly told to you. It's just there, like this cloudy, misty darkness that's just there all the time to make it impossible for them to see anything. And also the fact that we never really know anything about the man and child, how they lived before, and yet I was so invested in what was going to happen to them throughout. I felt like I knew a lot about them as we made our way through the book, like about what they are as people, which again is fascinating to me, to do all of that without really telling us. Like, I don't even think I know what they look like, and that's not important. What did the man used to do before the apocalypse happened? Doesn't matter. We know everything we need to know just from what we read now, which, it is just brilliant. I was very happy to have read it.
Yeah. I was much more consumed by how it was written for about the first 100 pages or so, because it's very different, obviously, in how it's structured and set out. There's no real chapters to it. It's very much a stream of consciousness kind of thing, especially with the idea that we've got the idea that everything just happens in small chunks, and I thought there's no way you can keep this up for the amount of pages that it is. And for the amount of pages that we've got going in. And yet somehow by the time you get past 100 pages, you just felt like you knew the characters very, very well. You knew what their concerns were, and the questions that the book was posing were the same questions you had as a reader in some ways, about whether, is there any reason to continue on? Is there any reason to keep on going?
Yeah, I'm wondering. Well, I guess just general thoughts were, just like you, Chris, it took me a little bit to adjust to the writing style because it is so different. The text is pretty big, like the font is pretty big on the page, and even though it seems like it seems like Varsha mentioned. It seems like there's a lot of things that aren't explicitly said to you, but you can just fill in a lot of blanks on your own. And sometimes that's worse. I think that's more effective than being told, because you don't really know, like his wife and the boy's mom, we don't really know what happened to her, or in it, you would think this post-apocalyptic kind of story would be fast-paced, and whether they're running for their lives or there's constant action. It's more of a slow and plotting dread than it is like this this wall-to-wall action, or kind of the feeling to it is more just like this minute to minute, you're just struggling to survive. And every decision you make, how much you eat or how much you drink or where your next meal is coming from or how you're going to survive, you're just trying to get from point to point. But I was a little bit confused over why they wanted to go to the ocean and why they didn't stay in the bunker they found. I know they're afraid of someone finding it, but if nobody had found it yet, I was a little bit confused as to why they didn't stay there longer.
I think, I spent some time thinking about that too. But I guess the man found it by accident, right? There was, like, maybe he looked where other people hadn't with the mud over and everything. But now that they had dug it up, it was clearly visible. And he tried something by putting the mattress over, but that's just signaling even more that something is here to come loot. So for that reason, I think once he opened it up, it's immediately obvious that there's something there. And we see that everybody who they run upon, like every house has been looted, and everybody, they even run into a few people like in the act of looting a house. So sooner or later someone is going to come here. He's just trying to stay ahead of it, I guess. And like really bad things happen if they do get caught. Like once or twice they were almost caught for like to be eaten, which is a terrible fate, I think, for him to put the boy in. So it made sense to me that like he would leave from there as soon as possible. Like as soon as they found the place, I felt like, no, you can't stay there very long. I know they're not going to. And it just made sense with all of the other things that had been set up so far.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key questions that the book asks you, in terms of especially that bunker scene, because I think if you're reading it, you're thinking this seems like actual happiness here. This seems like actually a good quality of life, something that is so far removed from what they've been doing for a long time that you would want to stay there for a very long time and do that. Yet I think you've got to think back to what they're actually doing on the road at the start. The idea isn't just for this man to feed his child by the end of the day. He's trying to create a life and create a structure for this young boy that he's left in his care, because he's seen his wife kind of give up and he's kind of holding the candle. Sure, they can stay there longer, but at some point they're going to have to leave. It's a finite resource. Everything's just not quite what it appears to be. And he also knows, and we also know at the stage, that his health is failing. He knows that he has got a limited amount of time left, and while it could be comfortable, and certainly that was one of the key questions I asked myself, would it be better to keep on going and live yourself in like abject poverty and a terrible kind of way with the hope of a future, or to live comfortably for a while and get used to that lifestyle for a while and then go out? It is definitely a tough question, and the fact that they stayed there as long as they did probably shows you how much that kind of weighed as a decision for them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I like what you said about the giving the boy a structure, right? I think they wanted to get to the coast so that, because they had hope of finding something there, like at the very least warmth, if nothing else. So they were making their way to the coast, but also I guess one thing that kept making certain was that the boy never got complacent, and staying there would be complacence to think that nothing would happen to them while they are there. I think it was just a matter of time. So, yeah, I really like what you said about giving the boy structure and showing him how to live on without him too.
Yeah, that's a good point about the bunker. And I forgot they dug up the door because they heard the door, and they dug. So yeah, I forgot about that part, that they dug up the hatch.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit of a red flag when there's a mattress over. I guess someone would have found it, but
yeah,
it's such a nice place.
Yeah, and it was almost exactly at the halfway point. So I think I felt such a great deal of relief at that point. It's like, okay, they can breathe for just a bit now, just a little bit. They can be okay. And that made a lot of difference with the story because, like, every night I was... so I read Grand Conspiracy alongside this. And that's... sometimes it's like I can only manage 10 pages of it. But after I finished reading The Road, it's not like hard to read or anything. But it weighed on me so much that I was glad to have something that felt a lot more cheerful to read instead. So, like, if that hadn't happened, if we didn't have that break at that point, I feel like it would have been harder for me to continue. Like, I would have taken a lot more time to finish. And the other thing I wanted to say is, like, somewhat related. The audiobook is only like 5.5 hours long or something. And I'm a slow reader, but I can usually read at least at audiobook pace or sometimes slightly faster than that. But this one took me, I'm pretty sure, a lot longer than 5 hours because I kept stopping to think about so much and like taking so many notes and just letting everything sink in. It was just a very engaging read that way too.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have... I have to say, I kind of went in expecting it to be a lot worse than what it was, if that makes sense. I expected it to be a lot more dire, but I think the whole point of then continuing along the road is that there might be hope around the corner. They have hope, or he has hope at the very, very least, that things will change and get better, whether it's when they get to the ocean or whether they get to the sea or wherever they get to somewhere else. And a lot of people had obviously said this was a very nihilistic book, and a very nihilistic read. And yes, I do think that's true, but I also think it is a study in nihilism because it does seem for a long time that the characters aren't sure why they're keeping on going forward. And we don't really understand why they're going forward. Is there a point to this? And if you were in the same shoes, would you keep pushing forward through what is some terrible circumstances? Like, there doesn't seem to be any hope. There doesn't seem to be. It's not like the extinction level event that has happened in the world has just happened. It's happened a while ago. So they're really living very much in the aftermath when resources are very much at a nil, and we see them eating young and all of that kind of stuff. So the threat is there for them. Would you keep going in that sense? And it sort of brings in the question whether the end is really the end or what actually is happening at the end when we get to it, which I'm sure we'll talk about in some stage. But I always seen it as being a hopeful book because we're hoping that every time you turn the page, something good was going to happen at the end. And sometimes it did happen, even if it was fleeting.
I guess if you don't have hope, then, or if you don't think that something around the corner is coming, then what do you have to live for? Like, there's nothing really. If you don't have anything to even be hopeful about, or think something may come, then why bother?
Yeah, and the man, that's the lesson he's trying to give the child, right? In terms of trying to teach him to not give up. To what end, we don't know. And the boy has his doubts too. He tells him, I wish I was with mom, meaning that I wish I was dead. And then he asks him, what's our long-term plan for this? Like, throwing out all these adult phrases out there. And the man has no answer except that I think he feels that it's wrong to give up. And maybe he's right in that regard, because if they keep characterizing themselves as the good guys, and the bad guys are the bad, quote unquote bad guys, are apparently surviving by eating resorting to cannibalism, doing whatever they need to survive. So maybe, I don't know if he's explicitly thinking about this, but maybe the fact of their survival means that some good will live on in the world, that there is another way. And so there is hope for the world in the future. So maybe that's the world, that's what the man is fighting for. I don't know if he's explicitly thinking that, but for good people to survive, it means something. And I think at least the book probably has that message. So I don't know about nihilism, like, not that I'm super clear on what they mean by calling it a nihilistic book, but it is, I think, very much a book about hope and surviving through the worst. Like, it's kind of like with Berserk, right? You keep feeling like there's no hope, but that someone is willing to fight through anything to survive, that means something. That those are stories worth reading.
I think, not to get sidetracked, but I think the term nihilism and nihilistic is used a little bit too much, and I think that's another way for people to say, or for some people to express that something was dark, or I don't say depressing, but I think it's used a little bit too loosely. I don't think there's anything nihilistic about the road.
No, I don't think so. Like, I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, nihilism means that the ultimate message is that it's all pointless. Why bother? That is the opposite of what this book is telling us.
Is it though? Is it? Like, they have a character at the start, the mother, who definitely believes it's pointless. Now, I think it can be sort of excused that she is probably suffering from some postnatal depression of some sort. I think that's the way I read it, for sure, and that's why she gives up on one stage. But there is a sense that, as we're reading it, that to what end? If they don't get an apple from the ground in the next field, that's the kind of thing that they're hoping for. And so if you're in that position yourself, and if you are cold, like, to me, the most distressing part wasn't even the food, it was the clothing situation that I really felt for them. This idea that they were walking through the snow and the tar and all the rest of it, basically plastic bags around their feet that would wear out, that weren't actually very long wearing, that when that seeps into your skin, and that cold seeps into your skin, the way you're sleeping every night seeps in your skin. He even refers to it at one stage where he talks a little bit about the things that he took for granted from his old life, and the things that people would complain about, and not being good enough, and how they are living now on a moment-to-moment basis. They can't stay on one set. They can't even light a fire properly in open road for fear that the smoke would be seen. So it definitely does flout with the question of, actually, what is the point of all this? Like, what are they actually hoping to achieve? Because I think for me as the reader, you're kind of assuming that civilization or a congregation or community doesn't exist in this world for whatever reason. And the things that we might be looking for in like other kind of similar stories, like The Walking Dead or something like that, where there are these communities that hold together, that people can kind of put together. Even The Last of Us community created there that people could kind of go to. Doesn't seem to be something that they see. And in fact, the communities are much more akin to I Am Legend, if you know what I mean, in that the monsters are now in control of the world, rather than, you can call them the bad guys if you want versus the good guys, but whether it's the same, it's more of a similar question that I Am Legend poses with Richard Matheson. In fact, that he's the only man left, it seems like, and at that point, what is he fighting for? Like, is he fighting just to stay alive for the sake of staying alive, or is there purpose to his life? And especially for the man, I think there's purpose for him, and I think that's where I do agree with you on that. The man definitely has purpose. He has a goal, and he has an idea that you don't give up and that you do. But the young boy isn't convinced the whole way through the movie. He even talks about the fact that he wished he'd have died with his mum and he hadn't have been there. So, and the fact that he didn't know any other life probably speaks to that. But I think it definitely does ask that question quite clearly throughout the book as to, is there any point in this? And actually, is he just torturing this young boy in some ways because his hope is such that he's carrying it through, but there really isn't any hope throughout the novel.
Yeah, just for according to Merriam-Webster, the definition of nihilism is a viewpoint that traditional values and beliefs are unfounded and that existence is senseless and useless. So, also a doctrine that denies any objective ground of truth, and especially of moral truths. So I think the way that he treats the boy, he's very patient with him. He's he could have. I mean, if it was a if it was a nihilistic story, he would have killed the boy to save him. But I think the fact that he keeps him alive, and he tries to, there is hope that something around the corner will, they'll find somebody or something that I think the man is surviving to give the boy a better life somehow. He's searching to give the boy a life that is somehow better.
Yeah.
And he's willing to die for that. I don't know. It seems very, I don't know. I guess you could see it either way. I guess you can make the argument that it's selfish to keep him alive. It's selfish in a way to make him suffer. But I guess the question is it worth living? I guess we can ask ourselves is it worth living to, is it all pointless? Or is it worth getting up and trying to survive one more day in the hopes that you'll find something better around the corner?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I certainly agree that it's posing that question about whether it's worth continuing on. And I kind of think that the final answer it's giving us to take home with is that maybe, just maybe it is. Not a certain or clear-cut yes, but maybe. Because if you think about the boy, he finds these moments of joy, right? Like when he runs in the ocean and he's happy about it. He comes back crying. I don't know why, like just the depth of emotion there, I guess, for maybe having found something to bring joy to him, and the hope that he finds other children to keep him company, which he does. So for the boy, at least, it seemed like he'll have a few more good days out of it. Was it worth all the bad days to get there? Maybe not, but there's that question, like would he lead on to now have a decent life because the man fought to give him that? And yeah, it's just, the questions are all there, but I don't think the answer is, I think that the answer is just leaning a little bit towards, yeah, it's worth it. And we may not agree with it, but I don't think that that's what the book is telling us, that there's no point.
Yeah, definitely agree. Like, I didn't necessarily read it as an analytic book, but I think it poses the question quite a lot throughout it. I think that's definitely a thing. And certainly the father character is the one who never, he won't even consider the idea that they give up. Like, he doesn't even want to hear his son talk about it. He doesn't even want to hear him think about it. But in his actions are somewhat slightly differently, because he is very much only looking after the very necessities of life. So if you're thinking about Maslow's pyramid of needs or otherwise, the food and shelter bit is the only thing that he's concerned about, and other people do not come into his vision. So the idea of love versus unconditional love, he can only use his unconditional love in order to care for somebody. He cannot see compassion for other people because it's been drained out of him, because he's trying to get food and shelter for the boy as his only primary need. And if they were ever in a state where they had food and shelter, which they did, that was the only time they shared the cans, remember, with the man. They had food kind of taken care of, and they could let love into their lives then a little bit. They could kind of care for another individual at that stage. But at every other stage of the story, you don't approach anybody, you don't go near anybody, it's too risky. They were fighting for every morsel and scrap that they could find. And I thought the way that was portrayed in the story was kind of magnificent in some ways, and that he kind of showed that if you could ever get to the point where you could have some sort of like basic necessities met, then there was hope for humanity, or there was hope for whatever the future of the human race would be.
So in a world where everything is okay, what might prevent people from resorting to what we might term evil is the availability of basic necessities. Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's fantastic.
And to think, because of the nature of the event that's happened here, they couldn't farm, they couldn't grow anything, and I think that's part of what the major problem with the human race was, because I think all things being equal, people would congregate and set up communities and start grow things and realize that was good for the common good. But because of the nature of the disaster, the tar, the soot, the ash, the things that were taken over, that wasn't an option for them. So they were left to scavenge and die out, probably just from lack of, food. And even shelter was a problem, because that was where people could be found and attacked, because they were the food stuff. So if you were living in a place or put in one place, you were making yourself a target to be food. And that's why they have to keep on going, which is obviously very risky and very, dangerous in its own right. But obviously some people were doing it.
Yeah. I really like that the boy is the man's sort of moral compass. That conversation they have towards the end, when he says that your stories are not true because you keep saying that we always help people and then we don't. And then I think the moment where the man says, you haven't had to look out for us, and the boy says, no, I have had to look out for us, which is it was a really profound moment for me, because the man, he's been taking care of the physical well-being of the child, but the child has been in many ways taking care of the man's spiritual well-being. And this also echoes a little bit what the interaction they have with the old man, where they have this whole conversation about whether a god could exist in a world like this. And I forget how the conversation goes, but I think the old man asks him if he believes in God and that's why he's being kind. And the man says, I don't know, I'm still trying to work it out myself about what is driving this boy's moral compass. And I think for me, again, that's another fantastic, really profound moment. It just in those two sentences, it brings up so much about religion and morality and what your source of what your driving source is for being good. Can you be a morally right person if you don't believe in God? Or is that your entire source of morality? If you don't have anyone to be accountable to, the straight up answer is to resort to evil. So I feel the boy is this shining light of good in this world that needs to be protected somehow. That's the impression that gives us, which, yeah, I think once again, it's just so beautifully done with so little space.
It's funny, it's used the shining light. They talk about carrying the fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that characterization too. I don't remember if it was defined at any point, but they keep bringing that up with each other, that we have to carry the fire, we have to be... I love how they call that, and the nice little connection at the end that when the man dies, that's the afterlife, that carrying the fire was worth it to be a good person, and whatever that meant to him, to close it out in the afterlife and to maybe give him somewhere good to go to close it out for us as readers. That also I thought was really nice.
I love how the overall story arc of the book mirrors a traditional father-son relationship, and so far he does die in the end in sort of tragic circumstances, and the whole arc of the story is one of pain and suffering, but at the end he has done his role as a father. He has taken his son and it's created a path for him to go forward and live out the rest of his life, because as all parents, all things being well, we'll not outlive our kids. They'll move on past us, we'll move on, and we'll have done our role in their life. And I loved how that was written at the end, and I didn't see that until the very end, until kind of closed the book and kind of sort of, and kind of went, this is just a traditional father-son relationship in a lot of ways. The circumstances are terrible. The things that happen to them are terrible. They see things that nobody should ever have to see. But at the end of the day, that is all that it is. At the end of, and sort of mirrors modern life and not just dystopian life.
When the boy says it's already in my head, there's nothing I can do about it. There's only so much you can do to protect your children from being exposed to what you think of as all the bad in the world. But yeah, I guess you also need to give them a way to deal with it when they have seen it and what internalized it.
It's a yeah, it's interesting. The writing style though took a little bit of getting used to. I think the lack of even like apostrophes and the sentence structure felt, some of them felt like run-ons and some of them felt very short.
Yeah.
You couldn't really, just when you kind of felt like you would get a hang of it, it would do something else that would kind of throw you off. And I think that's the way I took it was it's a way to make you feel uncomfortable or make you feel, not make you feel too secure, I guess, in how it was written. Kind of helps with the whole vibe.
Yeah. It's sort of written in an almost biblical style. I think these allusions, like Varsha brought up about the thing of God, but it's almost written like in Genesis style from the Bible, because every kind of little section ends with the conversation, the last line between the boy and the son, and it was almost and so the man said this, and then the boy nodded and said, "I agree." And it felt very biblical in that sense, very Old Testament in some ways. Like God said it would be done like this, and then it happened. And every little section seemed to be kind of written in that way, and it meant that it had a rhythm and it had a pacing to it that was almost like poetry, as opposed to just kind of narrative prose that you normally read, and you kind of got into that flow of, I could just do that, and it meant you could stop anywhere. It has no paragraphs, but you could literally draw a line in the page and go, right, I'll stop there for tonight. That's enough for me. I can get done with that and pick it up with tomorrow, because tomorrow is probably going to be the same as yesterday. It's probably going to be the same as the day before. And so you had a sense that there was a monotony to it. But like, how amazing is it that it was written in such a way that you never felt like it was telling you the same thing twice? Even though it was sort of Groundhog Day, like I was sort of blown away by that the whole way through, especially by the time you get to the end of the book and you go, like, wow, I really feel like I've been on a journey. It's literally a road movie. And there are only really about 3 or 4 events in the 300 pages, major events anyway,
Yeah, a lot of little events, but I guess for them, an event like finding like a Pepsi or a soda was a big event for them.
That was such a lovely scene.
Yeah. and that's kind of the moment you first realize the kid's goodness, like when he forces the dad to take a sip. It's like, you promised you wouldn't do this, and I won't drink if you would, and so on and so forth. Like, is looking out for the father. And I think, and lately I've come to really appreciate the writing of kids who grow up too soon, or who are forced to grow up too soon and have these adult behaviors, or just like really mature kids, I guess. That I love reading that, and I feel like this boy is a particularly well done example of that. And he never, like, he has these moments of childishness where it's like, I'm scared or I'm cold, and just complaining a little bit, hoping that the father will do something for him. But mostly he's looking out for the father as much as the father's looking out for him in many ways. You could argue that. And I thought that the first time we see that is that when they find that Pepsi and he's like, no, you have to drink too. I thought that was brilliant.
The there's moments like that where they find like a can, and there's also the moments where like the house they come up to, and they go to the basement and there's people tied up with missing limbs, and they can't help them as much as they would like to. They can't, because they end up tied up there too.
Yeah, but again, they use that scene again and again and again because it's been imprinted in the head. Because the boy is, the whole time, he's very risk averse. He just wants the father not to take risks and not to go anywhere. He says, please don't go there, please don't do that. And obviously, the first real time that he goes ahead and ignores the boy, that's when they go into the basement and they find themselves nearly trapped. And yet that comes up again and again with the young boy saying, don't go in, don't go in, don't go in. And sometimes there's good things happen and sometimes there's not good things happen. And it kind of shows the idea that you sort of can't just be careful all the time and you just can't just play it safe. You would literally be signing your own death warrant. And the father sort of tries to communicate that to him in as fatherly ways as he can, giving him the option to stay there. No, I don't want to stay here. I want to go with you. And then, right, okay, if you're going to do that, we're going to do this together. And to Varsha's point again about this God and this kid, even though this kid grew up in the really depths of poverty and the worst situation at all, people are inherently good. Mm-hmm. People are inherently born wanting to do the right thing, and life is the thing that makes them bad. And, you know, the kid's actions, even though he grew up in all these terrible ways, are still, like Varsha says, the moral compass to get the dad to do anything compassionate for other people. At any stage, it comes from the kid, and it comes from the child, even though the child has lost a mother, has had plastic bags for shoes for most of his life, sort of wanted to be dead for most of his life, sort of faced those questions that young children shouldn't have to, that he is still the source of goodness and of love throughout the story.
And you also get the sense that the dad, he's of course not inherently evil, right? In many ways, the kid is inherently good, but he also helped bring that out and nurture that aspect of his character. So by telling him stories, apparently we find out in which, you know, the good guys do good things, and by telling him we're the good guys and we're carrying the fire and so on. But the man, the things that he's doing, the lack of empathy or compassion that he's demonstrating, it's just, I get the sense that it's to ensure the child's survival more than, you know, looking out for himself. Like the difficult decisions he's having to make sure that the kid will live a little bit longer, because like that's probably how he's justifying it, is what I'm thinking, that he will protect the child against everything, even to the point of maybe doing things that he finds distasteful. But if the child survives out of it, that's good. And that's I guess, the fire that he's carrying within him, that he's looking out for the kid. And that's why it also makes sense when he says, you don't have to do anything to look out for both of us. Like, you're not making the tough decisions. It's they might die sooner if they did that, and the man doesn't want it. But again, you could ask the question, was it worth surviving like this? And for the boy, maybe if he lives on carrying the trauma of how he came about this survival by potentially killing other people for having done that, by like when they took the man's clothes, just that was unnecessary, right? The boy saw that, like, we didn't mean to kill him, but we did anyway. That's what he says. And that, again, like, the book is just full of like profound things the kid says. And I thought that was brilliant too. Like, sometimes just out of anger that the decisions that the man makes, the child is questioning him and challenging him. That was maybe not necessary, but most of the things he does are to ensure their survival, which, you know, you can understand the man's perspective too.
Chris, you mentioned earlier about the lack of crops because of the sky and because of the soil and the land is ash. That and what Varsha was just saying about the boy and him being, and what you were both discussing about him being good and life makes you bad. It's almost as if he's the seed that the man is carrying to plant, to cultivate a new world.
Yeah, I love that. I love that comparison. That's beautiful. And he's found, hopefully, the people who would help him with that. They have children and they haven't been eating other people, apparently, which is the bar for morality in this world.
It's the big words, apparently.
Yeah. Because there was a group of 4 before, right? When they were, I think they were by the bridge. There was a group of 4 that they were hiding from. That's not the same 4, right? The same, because. So,
the 4, you mean the one with the pregnant woman?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I think that ended really badly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
But
I
again,
forgot about
that's
the whole
all
fetus thing.
that's inferred. But whether that is actually the same people and what happened at the end, it's sort of inferred that that's the world that we live in. That's whether that is the same people. That's the likely outcome for that child. Because how can you support a baby like in that environment? Like, it's probably not even a starter. Like, how do you even begin to? It's hard enough to keep, people that are self-sustaining at that level alive. But yeah, that was quite horrific, that scene.
Yeah, it really was, and I don't want to think about it, but yeah, which also answers the question I treated myself to some Goodreads reviews that I want to rant to you guys about after we finish recording.
Okay.
But but like, one of the questions that came up often was what you were asking about, Steve, earlier, that like, why did they not stay? Like, things like this I think make it clear that and neither of them is strong enough to fight anyone off. If they get taken, that's the end there. So of course they're going to keep running constantly, and it just all adds up together. Like, the world makes sense. You have this starting point. You don't know how the apocalypse happened, and you don't know what caused it, where it's going, if it's just this continent or the whole planet, whatever. But we know that where they are, everything that they're experiencing makes sense.
Yeah, it's again that same idea. That the more that I read on in the book, the more I came back to the fact that as great as the shelter was, it wasn't actually what they were looking for. It was not the thing that they were hoping to find. It was certainly like a million times better and like a paradise to them. It was almost like finding the oasis in the desert. You could sit and drink off the oasis in the desert for a long, long time, but at a certain point, it's not enough just to stay there. It might be great in some ways, but you have to move on. You're hoping for something even better than that. That maybe hasn't got as much food, hasn't got as much, heat and beds and all that kind of stuff. It even had bloody toilets, like unbelievable. The kind of, even though they couldn't work them. Yeah. But they were hoping for something that was more sustainable and more long term, that had a sense of belonging and doing, and not just the two of them. Especially like the father knew he was not long for the world at a certain stage, and that his time with which to look after the boy was growing short. And even with that one bullet in the gun, you never got the sense that he wanted to use it.
The man even has a thought to himself that he wishes they hadn't found this, that like, now that because it's making it that much harder to leave and continue on as they had before. And I don't know, this is not harped on about, like, it's really interesting to me that they don't have any moments of regret about the things that they left behind. So I think when they run into the man, for instance, the old man to whom they give him a can of food, they could in theory have pointed him to that place where they got all of this from, or they could have, they didn't bemoan what they had left behind even once, which I thought was very interesting. We don't, and maybe it ties into what the man tells the boy about, like, it's almost a good thing that you're dreaming about bad things, because if you start dreaming about things that don't exist, or wishing for nicer things, that means you're giving up in some sense. So maybe he's implementing that lesson in, like, not wishing for what they had a few days ago, just like this unlimited supply of food, seemingly unlimited, that was going to run out soon too.
Even just the wheel on the cart was a big deal. Just finding or just being able to repair the wheel on the cart.
Yeah. I kept looking for tools. Like it, and when I said it weighed on me, like, it really stayed with me between readings, right? Like, reading sessions. Like, there's almost a sense of guilt. Like, I'm like, am I using too much water in the shower? Like, am I eating too much food? This sense that you carry with you from the book between, which I think is what makes it so fantastic. Like, which is why one of the things I use to determine how much I like a book is how much it stays with me. Well, after, of course, but between readings. And this one really stayed with me the whole time.
Yeah, it's a brilliant book.
Would either of you prefer that we know what happened to that it's whether it was a natural disaster or a man-made disaster? Would you either of you prefer to know? Because I think it's better we don't know what happened. I guess it doesn't matter.
It means you, yeah. It's not what the book's about, but it also gives you reason to worry about what we're doing to the planet. It sort of is like an ecological novel in that way, insofar as like whatever happened, this can't be allowed to happen in our world, you know. And because they don't tell us what it is, you can infer what you like then. Oh, this was because of nuclear fallout, or this was because of, you know, something else that happened, you know, an ecological disaster of some sort that wasn't just that. And kind of say like this, everything that we have in our world means naught if we don't have a way to get food. We can't stay in shelter. You know, those are the strengths of community and of humankind. And there definitely is the question that actually, if this happens, even in one place, humanity is finished. I mean, this is a ticking time bomb, even for the people that are left and for the boy. There probably isn't a long-term future for the race in this case. Like, it seems only a matter of time before the numbers dwindle out enough till there's nobody left. And whatever has happened beforehand just has to be prevented. And, you know, it's only really through art and fiction and movies and all of those kind of stuff that you really get to explore these things in a lot of depth. And it's where the power of the arts really come through. And whether this is a very extreme version and it's very much about a father-son patriarchal relationship, it's about a lot of other things as well. Mm-hmm. And then kind of cautionary notes about the future of where we're going as a planet and a race, you know.
Yeah. I think that's a great point, because you could, another way of like, if you think about what the boy means, like we've talked about a few different things, this could also be a message that like this is the goodness that you'll wipe out from the world if you're not careful, like not taking care of the environment. And to the other point about like what humans do to each other and the planet and so on, it's really interesting that whenever they go to dig stuff up and like find things that they can use, all the things that are very, very important to us now, they're just lying there unattended, like nobody cares about them. I guess there was one place where they found some gold coins that had just been left behind, and some places had money, and some electronics shop was like pretty much intact. So all the things that feel important, that we maybe sometimes engage in like bad activities to get, are suddenly not important anymore, because it's down to the very basics of getting food and shelter.
Yeah.
I love that section, how all the expensive electronics were still on the shelf, just because you have no use for them. It's just food and water is what matters.
Yeah. A lot to think about.
Yeah. It certainly is. It asks a lot of questions throughout the book, and a lot of things that kind of make you think as much as anything else. Like there's that amazing scene where they're walking along and they see a reflection of themselves.
Yeah.
And they almost shoot themselves because they don't recognize themselves. They have no sense of self-identity at that stage. Like this isn't a modern society where we wake up and see ourselves in phones or mirrors or anything at any stage. It's just, you know, you grow haggard. Self-preservation and self-care doesn't become an issue in so much as you just have no means to do it. You've no way to even do that. And the things that are important are just finding rotting apples on the ground. Like I think that really brought home. They'd seen that as a feast, even though those apples were probably poisoned or decayed so much that they were dangerous to them at some stage. It was still better to eat them in large numbers than it was to not eat them at that stage. And a lot of things that were very, very powerful about that.
Yeah. And when they pulled water out of that septic tank, like what has that been there for years? That in today's world, like if we find water like that, we probably discard it, not think about consuming it. But it is apparently for them the sweetest tasting water that they've had in a while. Which again, like in the things that you are told without explicitly being told, that just the state of the world, right? The lack of clean water anywhere around, the rivers, that even the rivers have run out, those rivers that they come across, they have ash in all the water, so all the exposed surface water is not good for drinking anymore. So what is that just being like stagnant for years and years is tasting sweet to them.
Yeah.
So Chris, you'd mentioned the end. The last paragraph, I think it's, maybe unless I missed something, I kind of felt like it was left to be vague, that we can either take that as a memory or as the future. I think that's intentionally vague, but unless I missed something, but that's kind of the way I walked away from it, that we can choose, you can choose to see it as that's the boy later in life, that things the earth starts to heal itself and humanity starts to heal and the fish are back and there's a creek, or it's a memory of what has been and what will never be again.
Yeah.
I love. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say, I think that's exactly the point, and I think even the time when the father dies and the boy's left on his own, we are hoping that the next person that he meets is going to be one of the good guys again, and regardless of what he's going to say, we're going to accept it as a reader, because I think that's another point of the book, is that things have been so bad for so long, we are predisposed to see the good in situations rather than the bad, and think it's going to be bad, especially as you're getting towards the end of the book and you're like, I want this to end on a happy note. You desperately do want this, and come away and go, there was a reason for the trek, there was a reason for the journey, there was a reason for carrying on when you didn't maybe have other real tangible reasons for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but did you see it as hopeful or as what has been and will never be again? What did you both walk away with?
I think my conclusion was that this used to be, but I mean, I first thought that this was the boy in the future, and I felt hopeful about it, but then I came back, and the last line says, "In the deep glens where they lived, all things were older than man, and they hummed of mystery," which I thought was really beautiful. And I wasn't sure if I was reading it correctly, that this is the future, so then I went back and it says, "Once there were brook trout in the stream." So that made me think that maybe it's just the past, but maybe not. Like, I'm also like, it's more wishful thinking than concluding from the text that this is maybe the future, but you could be right that it's I think I agree with you that it's intentionally vague and it could be either, and I like the happier interpretation that the boy lived on and found somewhere good to be.
I sort of took it a bit more as there were certain things that we couldn't fix about the world, but there were certain things that were long-standing and would always survive. I think the thing about the fish coming back seems unlikely, because they never seen any animals the whole time they were walking along. Like, there was no sign of life the whole time, and it's sort of assumed that that's gone. You know, that's away. So I sort of read it as things that couldn't get back, but the planet still exists, and the planet could still heal and fix itself in some way. But there were things that would never come back about it, and you know. Maybe that's enough for hope. Maybe that's enough to kind of say, look, we can't have things the way they once were. And I think a lot of dystopian novels, like I can think of something like Station 11, sort of comes to a similar kind of idea throughout the middle of the book, in terms of this is what civilization could look like in the future, in a lot of ways. And they give a couple of different versions of that. And I think that's enough. I think that the one thing that we don't want is the extinction of a race. I think that's very, very hard to get to an end of a book, especially one that's a bit of journey and about hope, to kind of say, well, it wasn't worth it at the end. That everything died and all that was left was a few mountain streams, or you know, something like that, things that predated man.
Yeah. That I like that the old man says everything will be better if we all die.
Yeah.
that just I guess again, like, the planet can probably heal itself in a few hundreds of thousands or millions of years, but yeah. But if humanity survives, they would trout. And I also had this moment of fear that is, okay, they saw the trout and that's the only other surviving creature they found besides humans. I hope they don't eat it and destroy all of it. Like, I mean, of course they will, or rather that if they do, it's gone again. Like, how do you ever bring that back? So that was a thought I had, like, just a fearful thought for the trout that the only surviving creature that they find is probably going to die too. So
a lot of very powerful passages in it, in the book as well. Like, I marked quite a few more than I normally even would. I'm gonna read out this one because I thought this really touched a lot. It's on page 163 of my copy, but it says, he turned and looked at the boy. Maybe he understood for the first time to the boy he was himself an alien, a being from a planet that no longer existed, the tales of which were suspect. He could not construct for the child's pleasure the world he'd lost without constructing the loss as well, and he thought that perhaps the child had known this better than he. Like, I just thought that was such a poignant thing of to kind of say about what life the child had and what he knew of life up to that point. You know, at least the man had memory of what civilization was and what a good life was and what happiness was, and that when he spoke, his child looked at him and went, I can't relate to you because I don't know that world of which you speak of. And I was like, wow, that's a tough thing.
That was a brilliant passage. I have it underlined with 2 exclamation points because I wanted to know how good it was.
Yeah.
and then just later in that same paragraph, that he could not enkindle in the heart of the child what was ashes in his own. Even now, some part of him wished they'd never found this refuge. Some part of him wished it to be over.
Yeah. Oh, man.
What other, do either of you have any other passages marked?
Yeah, I've quite a lot. I've one on page 202. When your dreams are of some world that never was, or some world that never will be, and you're happy again, then you will have given up. Do you understand? And you can't give up. I won't let you. And there's a lot of those things. There's also lots of passages about him. How does he leave the child on his own? You know, how does that happen? How does he even come to terms with that? Like, the start of the book is very much about, I have bullets in the gun for a reason. And as the thing goes on, he can't use the bullets in the gun. That's not a thing for himself or for the child. You do.
Sorry. I like when they go to very close to when they are finding just before they find the boat, I think they find some water that is very suspect and they have to decide whether to drink it, and the man says, I think we have no choice. And then later when they find the food in that house, like all the jarred food that's probably spoiled, and he wants the boy to weigh in on the decision on whether they should eat it, and the boy echoes the man and says, I think we have no choice. Yeah. So I thought that was brilliant that the boy was the one who said this time. And is it that the boy is learning, or that he's just echoing the man because he knows that's the answer he wants to hear? Or yeah, there's just so much depth in that conversation, in those two conversations.
I would sort of like to touch on the scenes on the beach at the end, because I think they're really interesting, both from a narrative perspective and also from a relationship and character building perspective. It seems to be the scene in the book, especially when they first get there and they're living there, that seems most like relatable normal life when kids go on holiday to the beach. You know, they still
Yeah.
want to do the same things that they want to do. They still want to live in the beach. They could do that, and yet the father is so preoccupied with survival that he loses a lot of that time with the boy. The time that would be the relationship building, the thing that they would do together, and like joy. He's actually spending nearly all of his day on the boat trying to look for more survival stuff, because that's the way that he's conditioned to do, even though he only has a few days left. You know, this is it's sort of a bit sad and that whole thing, and but you do get the sense that the boy is becoming the adult at that stage. He's the one that's looking after things and making mistakes, and making his final mistakes is what we hope it is, you know, in terms of losing things and all that kind of stuff. But it's I think it's such a, it must have been hard to think how to end the book, not just in terms of its final scene, but the lead up to the final scene. And I just thought it was such an interesting decision to frame it that way, and to give us that kind of relationship and changing of the hands and changing of the responsibility, you know, over from one to the other.
Yeah. And we did have like the time when the man got hurt with the arrow shot to him, where the boy sort of took care of him a little bit. That also echoing back to when the man took care of the boy when he was sick. So
Yeah.
To your point about the boy becoming the man now, the boy took a turn taking care of the man when he got shot by the arrow. So I guess he's already far more grown up than he should be, but he's growing up. Like, he's taking care of himself.
Have either of you seen the film?
I haven't.
You haven't?
I haven't actually, no.
It's really, really close.
Oh, right, okay.
It's
That
really
would have
close.
been the big question in terms of like how you go and frame that, because I think it's a brave choice to make a film like this, because I think book readers are a lot more optimistic about the future, I would say. In general, I think you read for escapism and that kind of stuff, whereas movie watchers tend to be a bit more passive sometimes and might not bring that hope. I think you need to bring hope into it with you as part of the reading experience in order to get you through and actually have that, whereas I know an awful lot of movie watchers going, well, this is going to be crap, isn't it?
I do wonder if it's because of the time investment, because you can go sit and watch a movie for 2 hours, or you can read a book for, I don't know, like a book, like, I don't know how long, like 7-8 hours it took to read it, probably for me. So you're much more invested in the character, and you put I think the way that you absorb text and you fill in, whether you visualize it or you feel it or you absorb it, is different than being more of a passive. It's more of a passive experience watching a movie than it is to read and to process it in your mind and take your time with it and really dwell on it. I think it's maybe that's why. I wonder if that's part of it, of being more hopeful, or kind of the outlook.
I'll have to check it out now, I have to say, especially if it is close, because there's something powerful about the visual storytelling within the novel, especially how it's written. You know, it is very much presented as a picture in my head. I wonder if anybody who reads this with, isn't it aphasia where you can't picture things in your head? I wonder how your experience of this book is if you don't do that, because it seems to me that this is a book where you see the movie playing out in your head, and actually then to compare it against a movie might be very interesting.
Yep. What do you both think of the fact that the man and the boy are never named? Like, did that change anything for you, or did you read it differently because of that? Did it even matter?
I guess I kind of took it as names don't really matter anymore. They're just two people. Like, there's really no need.
I guess the relationship over the individuals in it, right? Yeah.
I just think
I
it's so
like that.
funny how the books that we're reading at the moment have these overlapping things about them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
similar
Yeah.
ideas. It's not just this book and obviously the Jeff Vandermeer books, but I'm feeling lots of things books bleeding into each other, and you're like going, oh, they do that here as well as here, you know.
Yeah.
And it going through, and for very like obvious reasons. I think for the same reason that it's done in the Southern Reach trilogy, it's done here insofar as like who they are and what they do is much more important than identity, and who they were, because identity speaks to what happened in the past, and from this point forward in the story, it doesn't matter because it's about finding food, getting through to another night, getting through another sleep.
Mhm.
Yeah, I like that. I also thought of the Southern Reach trilogy, the fact that there were no names, and yeah, I think for the same reasons, what you're dealing with is so much bigger than you that
Yeah.
you're sort of lost as individuals.
I guess you really don't have time to think about your identity or who you are, or it's more about just surviving. I don't think anything else really matters anymore.
Yeah. What do you? I mean, we didn't talk about this too much, but the mother, apparently she just gave up, and we got like 2 or 3 brief glimpses where apparently he had a very happy life with her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we didn't get more backstory for it. I think I talked about this briefly when I was talking about like my high level thoughts on the book at the very beginning, but we don't know anything about what they used to be before the events in this book, right? Because presumably because they are so far ahead from where they are that it's futile to even think about that anymore. So we don't get much backstory, but the mother, they don't seem to remember her very much either, except once or twice when the boy's like, I wish I was with her.
Yeah.
And he's saying more than that he misses his mother. He's saying that he wishes he was dead and like not having to deal with the suffering on a daily basis. But I almost wish, a small part of me, a very small part, almost wishes that we got more about the mother and her reasons for giving up. Which again, like we understood, but I feel like it maybe did her a disservice as a person, because he had a very happy life with her, and it's almost like, you know, just the fact that she killed herself was just a way for the author to deal with her not being present in this story, like more than just like something about the world. But that's a very minor criticism, and like I don't think it's even valid criticism. I just wish we got more of her.
I think the fact that she gave up and that she was so hopeless and she didn't have hope, and he tried to, I think it felt like he tried to give her hope and to carry her the way that he carried the boy. And I think the glimpses, I feel like, make it more powerful because we don't get a lot about her. We just get the glimpses we do have feel very colorful, like the memories he has of her, like on the beach. But I think most people would probably be pretty hopeless facing something like this. I think most people would think, what's the point? Like, what's the point of living? So I would imagine that happened to a lot of people who survived whatever the initial event was. I think most people probably fall into that. Just why bother? Especially if there's like bands of people running around and they're eating each other, and you know, she tells them they're going to find me and they're going to kill us and they're going to eat me, and so I feel like it's, I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I would like to think I wouldn't fall into, but I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
I think to give us more detail would have meant we judged her a bit more rather than just accepting that it was her decision and went forward. But it did like the fact that it went into the fact that she wanted them all to do it together, but ultimately she knew if even her and the boy went, it would take his hope with him. Like he would just follow them. She would be effectively ending his life for him if that was the case, and that actually she could only do it for herself because it was her that felt that way rather than being a party decision. But like I said earlier, I think there's the sense that there's some postnatal depression there or something playing into that fact as well, because that giving up of a parent on their child is sort of against nature, even though we're caught in an against nature kind of world at this time. And do not put more time on it just means we don't dwell on it. It just means that we have set with our character slots and the kind of the world that we're left with without having to really drag over it and kind of talk about it into too great detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was a heavy read.
Yeah.
Never mind. Well, the question is, actually, I've got one for you, Steve. What? Because you just put up one day that you wanted to do a discussion on the road. So what prompted it?
I know.
What was it? What do you think?
Well, we've been reading Prince of Nothing, and Baker's influences are... McCarthy is among Baker's influences, but I'm kind of surprised that you picked The Road first and not Blood Meridian, assuming that you picked The Road for that reason. But
Yeah, I kind of felt like, from what I hear, is Blood Meridian is harder to... It's a tougher read, so I wanted to get an idea of kind of what to expect before Blood Meridian, because I hear I expected more of a straightforward reading experience of The Road, and that not what it was. So if Blood Meridian is a lot different, then I'm really curious to see how that's written and what that would be like. But yeah, that's next.
cool. Yeah. Yeah, I think Blood Meridian is supposedly extremely dark and whatnot. So if this one weighed on me so much, I'm like curious to see what that will do. Except I'll probably not read it in 1 week like I did this one.
No, we'll plan that out. We can do a month or two, but
yeah,
we'll spread it out a little bit better.
And I really want to read The Passenger and Stella Maris. I think that also sounds like something that might be up your alley, Steve, because I believe it deals with themes of grief, and I know that's your keyword, one of the keywords for books you like.
Yeah, it's a middle name. Yeah. Definitely, yeah.
It definitely whets the appetite for McCarthy as a writer. Like, if you can take what is effectively such a simple premise and story and make it so engaging. Like, I know it's not a massively long book, but the idea is sort of slim, if you know what I mean. There's not an awful lot to it. There's not an awful lot that you think you can do to it, and yet it was never not powerful. I actually did. I did it in 3 sittings. I did 100 pages each time and got through it that way. And I just, it was meaty, and it was inspiring, and it was depressing, and it was thoughtful all at the same time. Every time you did a chunk of the writing, you were like, okay, there's really something to it. And I have to say, I even went on, and it's the first book I've ever looked at and went, I wouldn't mind a folio edition of that,
Yeah.
So what do you both think the word count is for The Road?
Well, I'd say about
70,000, 60. Yeah, it might even be that low, yeah.
58,702. So almost 59,000.
Based on the audiobook.
That's probably a good way to look at it,
Yeah. I would have guessed more than that. But.
Yeah, I thought it was about 70,000, but it just goes to show you that if you have an idea and you're going to execute it, you don't necessarily need, because he eschewed a lot of world building. Again, very similar to Vandermeer's kind of trilogy, the Southern Region trilogy. He could have spent 500 words setting up the environment and the world there, and just like here, he eschews all that and just drops you straight in the middle of it. Respect your reader. Just give them what they need to get started. If you have questions, you can make up your own background for it. Whatever you feel like you think is viable for this world, and explain what happened, that's fine, but the story is about from this point forward, and the only time they really flash back is then looking back to the death of the mother and explaining where she went, which I think if they hadn't have done, you'd have been like, well, what happened there? Like, that seems a bit strange not to even mention her.
Yeah, I think this book has really amazed me with that's another thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately, the economical storytelling and like how much you can do with very little said. And I think this one is a masterclass in that for sure.
It is funny you mentioned the Southern Reach. It's very similar to Vanden, where we don't get. It's not very wordy. So it is very similar. Now that you both mentioned it, it's the anti-Stephen King, because when you get too detailed and you describe every little horrible thing that happens, it become, when you take so much time to read all these, it doesn't have the same, for me anyway. I know a lot. I mean, Stephen King is Stephen King.
I was gonna say, I'm not standing for this, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, he's Stephen King and I'm a nobody, but for me anyway, like it's more impactful when it's just short, like the fetus thing. Like it's a sentence, and it sticks with you. But if they described the spit and the way the body looked and the charred skin and how
Yes.
it just wouldn't have the same impact.
And I'm finding this with reading quite a lot of shorter-ish novels, that they can be incredibly powerful by being short, and especially in the hands of somebody that really knows what they're doing, that they can communicate so much by just letting the reader work some of it out, rather than kind of telling me all the time, rather than explaining every little bit out and making sure that I don't miss a bit. Just give me the important parts of it and let me work the rest of it out, because a lot of readers read a lot of books.
Yeah.
Yep. Just allowing the reader to fill in the gaps by themselves, placing that trust in the reader. I think that's a big deal. Oh, the editions of your books, do they have the introduction by, what's his name? Damn it.
By damn it, dear God.
Oh, come on.
It doesn't
John
actually...
Banwell? I didn't read all of it.
I read it up to a point. I do have to go back. I read the
introduction.
first while. Yes, I have it. It's the Picador one you have as well, do you, Varsha?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one.
So they've done all of
Nice.
McCarthy's books, as far as I know. This Picador collection, their choice of books, actually, they're what they call the Picador collection as a way through modern fiction. If you look at the titles, it's really interesting choice of books. As you go through, I'm sort of I might just go from the start. American Psycho's number 1, and then number 2 is Blood Meridian. So, it's an interesting...
Giving Varsha ideas.
Yes.
Yes.
Always. It took me a while to figure out that this is a fire and they're standing in front of it. It's really cool.
The artwork's lovely.
Anyway, the introduction, I think that's where I read it. It says that he got the idea for a story when he was in a hotel or motel with his youngest son, and he was looking out the window and had the thought that, like, if the world went to hell and ashes and everything was burning around him, he would do everything he could to protect the boy. And so the story was one, I guess, which I think that's really cool. that such a wonderful story came out of that.
Yeah.
That's
a Pulitzer Prize winning as well, I think, isn't it? Yeah, so... Sitting in a hotel room one day just looking out, and you get a Pulitzer Prize just from looking out the window. There's hope for us all, right?
and I think it also won the National Book Award. It's a lot of awards.
Yeah, it's worthy. I can't imagine actually reading it the year that it came out. That must have been kind of like, wow, It's different reading something... Imagine discovering this book or doing it as the first time read without all the hype that it has built up over the years, obviously, before we get to it. And it's become such a story book, and you sort of know what you're like coming into it. Has been a movie made, etc. But actually just reading this in isolation must have been incredibly powerful.
Yeah, to have discovered this for yourself the first time. Yeah, I like that. It's interesting. I was telling Chris and Jared sometime last week, Steve, that sometimes when I read books that I know are other people's favorites, it's harder for me to love it for some reason. Like, I have to find some spark that will make this my favorite. And I feel like this book, for how well known it is, it clicked immediately for me. So
that's interesting. Yeah, I guess you have to
personally
it
as well, Steve.
Sorry?
You've been training as well over the years, Steve, with all the dark stuff you've had us reading over the years to get to this point and go, yeah, it's quite a happy book. It's there's a lot of hope in it.
It's really a comedy, you know.
It's really, oh, I laughed.
It's yeah, I think it's pretty bleak, but
Yeah.
especially the but there is hope though. I think there's a lot of hope
For sure.
Yeah. Every time the boy said okay, I was laughing in my chair.
Yes. Yes.
Good boy. I mean, to get
Lots of
such an
okays
obedient
also.
child, I don't know, it's so unrealistic.
It is, yeah. There's no way this is real. Must be fiction.
It's the sequel of the same story, but with a teenager, might be just absolutely brilliant.
Not realistic, child to obedient, 1 star.
Yeah. 0 stars. Yeah.
I'd give negative stars if I could.
I hate this book. It's dumb. Well, anything else from the road you guys can think of?
No, plenty. You should read it. If you've got this far and you haven't read The Road, I think you should probably read The Road.
Yeah, even if you haven't read and you still listen to this and we spoiled everything for you, I think it's still worth the read. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think reading it is an experience. Like, it's not to get anywhere. And again, like a lot of the 1-star reviews that I treated myself to. I don't know why I did this, but like there is no plot. Oh.
See, there isn't, but like when you're reading it, they're gonna find some good. You know, you know that as a narrative device, they're gonna come along and find this place that is inherently good, and actually, there's a positive part of the book. So to say that happens isn't a spoiler. You know that going in. It's just where it's going to happen and it's in what way. And he sort of toys with that idea by coming across these houses multiple times throughout the book, and they all kind of have this leery and pose and atmosphere. Some of them are hidden away, some are more prominent. And you know that every time you go into one, you're taking a risk and something could happen, both good or bad. And I think that he plays with that quite a bit with the reader in terms of, would you go open the door? What would you do first when you go into the house? What would you say to yourself? And I think you would end up. I remember even as a reader going through it, going to second guess myself. Maybe they should go back before they go further. They should go back and get that bit sorted before moving on. So yeah, I really love that exploration.
And I like that the good guys were sort of trailing them towards the end. He came for the boy because the man had died. He suspected the man died. So that the final message that there is good in the world that may just fan out and become something bigger is nice.
Yeah. Definitely. So until Blood Meridian or American Psycho, we'll see what happens. But Varsha, where can people find you? The YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, the podcast Speculative Speculations, and a couple others that are linked from the About page, and of course always on the Page Chewing Forum, and apparently at the Blackjack table on the Page Chewing Forum.
High stakes blackjack table. High stakes.
High stakes. Well, JRR said I couldn't just hang on to my points from that group, so I have to play. It's only fair.
Yeah, if we could only play each other, that would be the fun thing.
Yeah.
Poker came up. That'd be interesting with our points.
I'll look into that.
Nice. Yeah.
Is there a poker thing we can do? And like, we'll not play with Dan unless he.
Yeah, I'll look into it. I might be able to
foresee.
find something.
I can foresee a poker problem, and Varsha's suddenly not being able to do any committed reads because she's doing poker strategy books.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely see that. And Chris, you said the blackjack table. Where can people find you?
You'll not find me on the blackjack table. I just win money on that. It seems like I'm up on the blackjack table, small chunks, doing that. But you could certainly find me on over the Page Tune forums where Paramita is organising everybody's reads for the next 6 months. Varsha and Paramita are doing a tag team in terms of dominating my time for the next while, which I make fun of, but I very much appreciate. Or you can find me on the YouTube channel at my name, Chris Moen.
Nice. And you can find me on the Page Chewing site, on the forums, and all the links are down below. So until next time, we'll talk to everyone very soon.